Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to Learning from Karbala, a special MUHARRAM series on Hidayat TV. My name is NASRIN KAZMI, and in this series we're going to be talking about the various different aspects that we can learn from when we look at Ashura and Karbala. We're going to look at the political side, the moral lessons, the emotional lessons, and the personal responsibilities also that we have. And how we can apply these to our own lives and how they are relevant for us today too. I'd like to take this opportunity to extend my deepest condolences to all the viewers, all the Ummah around the world on the tragic month of Muharram. So joining me today is Sister Ayman Hirji. Assalamu alaikum. Now, every year we commemorate this. It's an annual tradition that we do. But what I feel that we have to do is constantly, every single year, reinvent, in a sense, what we can take from it and how we can apply these lessons from our life. So it's not simply just commemorating the events and leaving them there, but then looking beyond that and deeper than that. What did Imam Hussein al-Islam want for the Ummah? Why did he revive this religion of his grandfather? Because he did it for us, he did it for all of us so that we can live Islam today. Mm-hmm. So it's important for us then to look upon the stance that he took and then make it relevant and apply it to our own lives. So this is why I wanted to really look at the crux of why he took the stand that he did, and it was essentially for the love of Allah. Definitely. And I think people forget this along the way. They get bogged down with all these other aspects and different, they look at it from different angles, and they're missing the point. Is that Imam Hussein al-Islam very famously said that, "Oh Allah, I did this in your love. I'm ready to make my children orphans in your love. True. And nothing can divert me. Even if they cut my body into hundreds of pieces, I would still do this for you." So if we could maybe talk a little bit about how we as Muslims can apply this sort of focus, this intention, to our own lives.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I begin with sending my condolences to Imam Zamana, to Rasulullah, and to Lady Zahra especially, on the tragic event of Karbala and the day of Ashura that will be upon us. You're right in saying that it's very important for us to remind ourselves what the real purpose of Imam Hussein's mission was. And it's very important for us to remember that it was no different to the message of Islam that Rasulullah brought, and that it was essentially the purest intention was behind this mission, was that of not causing mischief or further corruption in the land, or trying to gain any sort of power or position, but to show injustice as it was, to unmask injustice, the veil of injustice, and to make people realize that there was oppression all around and there was wrong, and that they were just turning a blind eye to it and a deaf ear to it, and also realizing that we have to also consider the events that Imam Hussein leaves Medina with his family, and he says to the governors of Yazid that, "I will leave this land, but I will not, a man like me will not give bay'ah to a man like Yazid." And he says, I will leave from Medina if that causes a disturbance for you. So if you really look at his position, initially when he starts to move out of Medina, or he makes his hijrah from Medina, it is not with an intention to have to wage in a war or to wage a battle. Rather he moves and he says, "I will even travel to a faraway land if need be, but I don't wish to cause any bloodshed, any more corruption, but I will not, I'd rather die a death of dignity than bow my head to humility like this, by accepting allegiance to a leader like Yazid." So you can see that the situation had reached such an intensity on all levels, social, moral, political, religious, economic. It had reached a level where there was corruption in every form, and there was no serious and real representation of Islam in any of the spheres. And so for him to move from Medina and then make his way to Mecca to perform the pilgrimage, so he leaves in Rajab, goes to Medina, to Mecca for his pilgrimage, cannot even complete that because he has the command for his assassination has been already given, that it's either bay'ah or his head. And he's heard of this message, and he's moving towards Kufa, where he has support and where he has people who are willing to accept his the imamat that he has, and they have invited him. And we know that there was letters sent from Kufa to Imam to say, come to us and you'll find refuge here and safety, and we accept you as our leader and Imam. And so he sends Muslim ibn Aqil. That was the first part of Karbala, really. Before it even started, this was the first deputy sent out. And we see his martyrdom as something that Imam Hussein witnesses along the way to Karbala. And he moves towards Kufa, but he's diverted. So at every point, there is no intention to seek out the war, to seek out the battle with them. And eventually then he reaches the land of Karbala. And even then he tells Muslim ibn Awsaja or another companion, if I'm not mistaken, who when he sees the army in opposition to Imam Hussein, raise voices in opposition to Imam Hussein, he says, allow me, Imam, to strike them. Allow me to silence them forever, for they are in no position to speak to you, the son of the Messenger of Allah, in this manner. And Imam puts his hand on his shoulder and he says, no, we will not be the first to initiate the war. We will not be the first side we will never be the first to release the first arrow in their direction. And at every point you see his constant admonition to the opposition. At every point. There was never a point where throughout his journey that he stopped conveying the message of true religion and Islam, which is the message of Rasulullah. And reminding people of Allah. It was not anything else that was separate from him that he was trying to achieve. He was trying to achieve that status of the contented soul, the one that Allah was happy with, most pleased with, and that he was pleased with Allah at that extent. So the maximum that he could get was at that point give up his entire family and his life to the last drop of blood he had. But he constantly reminded us that it was for Allah and for no one else. At many junctures in Karbala, you see, he tells his daughter, be patient. He tells his sister, be patient, there's still more tribulations to come. We are the family of Rasulullah, we are going to be tested, we are going to be trialed, but Allah is with us. Allah is with us. As long as Allah is with us. I mean, at one point when when Imam Hussein at one point during his journey puts his head down on his horse, and he sees a vision and he wakes up startled, and Ali Akbar says, Baba, what did you see? And he says, I see death, and I see that they will not rest until they have my head. And he says, well, are we not, Ali Akbar asks him at that point, are we not on haqq? And he says, yes, we are on haqq. And he said, then we have nothing to worry about. And that is what it is the haqq is the Quran, the haqq is Allah, the haqq is the truth. And in opposition to this were those individuals who stood against him, in a complete contrast. And so it was literally like Hizb of Allah, the party of Allah against the Hizb of Shaitan, literally to that extent that they had completely moved away from any mention of Allah except on a ritualistic basis.
Now this begs the question, and I think any intelligent person will ask themselves, how did the Ummah get to this state, just 50 short years after the passing of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that the grandson of the Prophet himself was going to be massacred on the plains of Karbala in this very brutal and disgusting way. Now, what led to that? I mean, we talk about, giving bay'ah to Yazid, who is now the Khalifa of the time, but how did the situation deteriorate so rapidly for us to get to that point? I think most people would then question how this came about.
I can only indicate what history says, and history is quite clear in telling us what happened straight after the death of Rasulullah. And before that, we know we were talking about Eid al-Ghadir and how Rasulullah delivers his final sermon and appoints Imam Ali alayhi salam as his wali, as the successor to the leadership of the Ummah after him. And we see straight after Rasulullah leaves this world that the people around him disperse from him. As if with the closing of his eyes and his soul leaving this world, as if all those 23 years amounted to nothing. So there was very few people, named people within history, who were by his side at the time of his death. And this warning came in the Quran well before he passed away. If Muhammad were to die, would you turn away? He is but a mortal, and were he to die, would you turn away from the religion of Allah? The idea was that were you really following the messenger in terms of because of his physical presence there, and once his soul and his body left this world, would you turn away from the real, the truth, the message? And that
so
is
it's
what
like the
we
real
saw.
test starts.
Yeah, and that's what we saw happening straight after Rasulullah's eyes shutting and him leaving this, departing this world, his soul departing this world. That the people who were very close to him, even before, in fact, he shut his eyes, were competing for that position, were vying for that position, whether it be leading the prayer or ignoring what he had to say in his last words. It was an attempt to sort of close the chapter on the leadership of Rasulullah at that point, and that he was the Prophet and that's it, and we do not accept any authority. And after that came a mentality which was already brewing for many years before, that there is no leadership after Rasulullah. There is no one assigned to this leadership. So we now, the Ummah, are going to take it upon ourselves to decide who is the best amongst us to lead. And that was done in seclusion,
And of course you're not speaking of yourself here, you're referring to what history dictates, and there is evidence to suggest that this is exactly what happened, factual, that this was what were the sequence of events at the time of the death of Rasulullah. And so the next successor is appointed, and you see even at that point the strength of the Muslims is still there, but as time goes on the leadership impacts on the people, doesn't it? And that impact is not one-sided or in one aspect, but an all-round. And you see Lady Zainab alayha salam in her sermon, when she speaks to Yazid, she says, and Allah will not only torment you, but He will also take to task those who placed you in your position. Exactly.
So whether it was the person who placed him in his position, who allowed him, when he was not leadership material, to allow him to take that position and lead the Ummah on at his whim, or it was the people who supported him in staying in power and supported his every claim and his every action. And that is why we constantly hear from the hadith of Rasulullah, from the A'immah, that one who oppresses and one who keeps quiet to oppression will receive the same punishment, and they are going to be judged the same manner.
Now this shows another aspect that of course we're highlighting here about social responsibility as well, personal responsibility as well. So you become a party to it if you don't oppose it.
Yes, you do.
And there's also a belief in some schools of thought that if you have a leader, there's no way that you can revolt against them, you have to obey every word. But we see that this contradicts the religion of Islam, this contradicts the words of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And what Imam Hussein Islam was doing here is, when he was revolting, he was showing the importance of forbidding evil and enjoining good. And this is one of the positions that he was taking, and he was demonstrating to the people that no, you don't have to just bow down to any kind of leader, especially if they're corrupt and unjust. It is your responsibility to stand up to them. And this is what he was doing.
And you can see that people who are so entrenched in materialism cannot see bad for bad, right? At that point, when you're so entrenched in that materialism and you are constantly bought out with gold and big palaces and lots of amenities, it's not going to, luxury is the order of the day. You're not going to see that you're in the wrong. And when you have an individual like the son of Rasulullah standing in front of you, reminding you of who he is, reminding you of your position and your responsibility, not to him, to yourselves. He never said to them, you have a responsibility to me. You have a responsibility to accept me, to obey me, to accept me as your imam, otherwise I will wage a war on you and kill you. To the extent that on the night of Ashura, he says to his companions, leave, because tomorrow your fate is nothing except death. It's destined. You are going to die. If you at any point feel any doubt and you do not want to stay, go. Take the cover of the night as take the darkness of the night as your cover and leave. There is no compulsion to stay with me. If even there is an iota of doubt in your heart as to my mission and the truth of who I am, then you will not stay. And those who stayed were the truest of his companions.
Of course.
And he himself said that none had companions like myself. And this is the whole point, that you see that the deterioration occurs by the time Imam Ali alayhi salam comes to power. The Ummah is split up into different groups of thinking and different ideas of how the rule should be and how the leadership should be. And now Imam Ali alayhi salam comes to an Ummah with factions and different ideals, and Islam has taken on like different forms of, oh, it's only Quran, oh, it's only Sunnah, oh, we don't want to believe in this, we don't want this, we accept this, we don't accept that. to the extent that it is during the time of Imam Ali, and it is not an indication of his rule that the first civil wars occur in his time, which is the leadership of Muawiyah, and he's seeping into Islam, his cruel, his cunning ways, and the nepotism that he was spreading in terms of appointing only his family in powers and places of position. And the treaty that he breaks with Imam Hassan after Imam Ali. Imam Ali
this is very
martyred. Why is he martyred? Why do the Muslims feel that the cousin of Rasulullah, the best person around to lead them, because they came with the leadership to him. He never went begging for it. They came and said, Ali, we want you to be our leader. And he said, this has no value for me. Yet I take it because it is in the best interest of the Muslim that I try to correct what has gone wrong, that I try and put things back together to the state of peace that it should be in. And then you see it's already in a decline, and it's only getting worse. It's not getting any better, because by the time of Imam Hassan, you see he's attacked in broad daylight. He has nobody around him to support him. People are in doubt about his leadership. People are in doubt about whether Muawiyah is right, whether Hassan is right. And then you see this treaty that he signs as he sees the best interests of those around him and the Muslim Ummah's leadership, and the treaty's conditions are all broken. Yet nobody sees Muawiyah for the traitor that he has been. He never even attempted to try and say, you know, they're all wrong. He just made sure that he used every particular way to put the family down so that he would gain favor. And he did this in very cunning ways. That was the thing about him. He was very intelligent in the way and cunning in the way he employed his politics. And so people sort of just accepted it as the norm, that we should have cunning, we should have unjust leaders, and we should just accept it as it is. Rather than honest, true, real leaders who are there to support us morally, spiritually, religiously, and politically too. And by the time Imam Hussein comes to power, he's already appointed Yazid as his successor. And now there's the enforcement.
And that was another condition he broke, of course, because Imam Hassan stated that he cannot.
And again, martyrdom of Imam Hassan through Muawiyah, through the orders of Muawiyah. And then when Yazid comes to power, there is now, if Hussein gains favor, because he's a weak leader, if Hussein gains favor, then he will overthrow me. Because he is a better leader than I am, he is a better human being all around than I am, and if he gains favor, then the whole of Medina is behind him. Then my power weakens. It's always about power play, power play, power play. Never about the welfare of the Muslims, never about the welfare of Islam. It was always just under the cover of Islam, we'll do as we will. And so for Imam Hussein, it became very important, very necessary to take on that step.
I mean, what this highlights for me very clearly here is what happens when you take it upon yourself to, whether you call it elect or whether you call it, you know, choosing yourself to be a leader, as opposed to the appointment that God makes. It's God that appoints prophets, and He's the one who appoints leaders for a very good reason.
And that is the tradition of Allah.
It is. And when you see that this doesn't happen, what happens to the state of the Ummah? Very, very quickly. And this is why when Imam Ali al-Islam is in power and he becomes the Khalif, how he then has to patch up and try to sort the problems that have occurred due to the last three leaders. So he needs to sort out the Ummah, and it's deteriorated to such an extent because if he was in power as Allah had intended from the beginning, we wouldn't be in the state that we are today. So it should, hopefully, when we look at Karbala, it should help us to trace back in history where this problem began from. And this is why I think another reason why Karbala is so important. And there are those who like to sweep it under the carpet and who don't like us to ask questions and do not want us to commemorate this every year and talk about it. But the fact is that more and more people are becoming aware of this, and more people are asking questions, these relevant questions. And it's a responsibility we all have, and it comes back to that personal responsibility with every age that every one of us has. But in terms of leadership, when we look at the fact that Imam Hussein al-Islam was, of course, the Imam of the time, and the Ummah at the time was then split between those who followed the official Khalif, if you like, of the Muslims, and then, of course, the Imam that was appointed by God. That is why there was a need for the bay'ah of Imam Hussein al-Islam, because, of course, Yazid, Muawiyah, they all knew that if they had the bay'ah of the Prophet's family, it
And
would
they have the favor of the majority, so to speak.
and it also shows that they recognized that they were
truly
with the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
And it's important to note that there are some factions of Muslims who take the extreme view when we talk about divine leadership and say that, oh, so we should not live in a democracy and we should not accept the leaders in a country and we should not follow the law of the land. That is not what we're saying here. That's not what we're saying at all. If we live in England and we have leaders above us and we have the power to be able to speak and stand up for others' rights, our rights, then we should utilize that platform. And nobody says cross the law of the land. Nobody said do that. That is our moral obligation, even as Muslims, to obey the law of the land, because there is a law in place and it's for regulating the people of the land. Of course, we are very fortunate that we have platforms where we can address our MPs, our leaders, those in office, and say that we're not happy about this decision. We're making a stance. We're doing this. We're doing that. Every country in the world doesn't have that opportunity, but that's why I'm saying democracy has its place and people's rights have its own place, and everything needs to be in a manner that benefits the people. And if there is grave injustices committed and oppression committed on the people by way of those in power, then they should be questioned. They should be put to trial, because they are human. They are human too, and they are taking on the responsibility of leading the nation. And we see this in contemporary times everywhere across the globe, that there are people in those positions of power who are taking it upon themselves to just decide the fate. And the revolutions happen because of this, because people are not happy with the way things are. And that this is their personal responsibility, like you were saying, that the leaders are for them. That if the leaders are not benefiting me, my children, my life, my morals, my political state, my economic state, then really the leader is just sitting there to be venerated and for position and power.
I mean, the real job of a leader is to serve the people and to represent the people. And if this isn't happening, which of course was the case of Muawiyah and Yazid as well, then something needs to be done about it. And it shows that he ruled with this sort of, instilling fear in the people, and
or buying them out by inviting them to materialism.
Yeah, and people did get caught up in that, and it took the stance of Imam Hussein Islam to shake up the Ummah at that point. Another aspect that we learned from looking at Karbala and looking at the relationships that were taking place is, of course, all of the companions and the family members looked upon Imam Hussein Islam as their leader, as their Imam. If we apply this to ourselves today, we can look at this in terms of course, we have Imam al-Zamana, Ajul Farjum Sharif. We know that he is the Imam of our time. But whilst he's still in Ghaibat, we look towards our Imams, our scholars, the Marja. We do Taqleed for this reason. So if you could talk a little bit about how this is important for us in this day and age.
Well, we see that we have had, alhamdulillah, Muslims had access to the Imams after the death of the Prophet. And as time went on, the sciences developed and Imams taught us, and they left behind a wealth of traditions. And from 6th Imam's time onwards, you see people asking questions and him referring 6, 7, 8, referring them to scholars of hadith and who had memorized the hadith and who knew the sciences well enough to assist people in answering their questions. So you already see this trend developing amongst the Muslims, where there was that sort of nudge of the Imams towards this idea that they are scholars amongst us who are aware of what can be done and how the questions that the general have can be answered. And we see at the 11th Imam's time that he endorses books of fiqh that the scholars write, that is the students write and everything, and he endorses them and he says these are the complete versions and you can rely on this. And we see this is again represented by Imam al-Zamana in that he has 4 naibs who are in constant communication, and that he is also with certain scholars in history, has been in touch with them when necessitated. But in the absence of Imam al-Zaman, not to say absence, but in us not having that direct link with him, or everyday link with him, in the physical presence, that we rely on a system of marja'iyat, which is to rely on for our fiqh issues and for other social issues and everything that surrounds that. We rely on them for the fatwas, the rulings, the Islamic rulings that are deduced from the sources of law that we have already. And these laws are also based on not necessarily just something that they they come up with over a day or two. But after years of learning, deliberation based on previous scholars' works and works of even more previous scholars that possibly could have been based on ahadith that were lost to us, because if we remember back in history, a lot of our Shia libraries were burnt down by the Mongols, and so there was a lot of destruction of the hadith books at one stage. And so there are some fatwas that are based on the consensus of this. It's based on Quran, hadith, ijma and aql. And these four, in addition to everything that they've seen of the scholars before. And then the fatwa is then put out, which also gives rise to, based on their deductions and deliberations, to different opinions.
Yeah.
And so these different opinions, for me personally, I don't know if I'm allowed to say me personally, but for me it would represent diversity in thinking, even at the scholarly level, that there is that opportunity for advancement and progress, and that we can take that further. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be in conflict.
Of course. Yeah, and when we look at how that was demonstrated in Karbala, we see that, of course, everyone took orders, asked permission to go on the battlefield of Imam Hussein al-Islam. But after he was martyred, then immediately they looked towards the next Imam, who was, of course, Imam Zain al-Abidin al-Salam. So this, again, it shows that knowing who your leader is, recognizing your leader, and being ready to be of service to him as well.
Definitely.
Inshallah.
And that's a very important point, actually, that you brought up. It's very important to know who your divinely appointed leader is. Divinely appointed, I say, emphasize.
Important words.
It's important because Allah says himself that he does not leave the earth without his rahmah. He doesn't leave the earth without his hujjah, and his hujjah, his proof, is here and living. And this is demonstrated in a lot of ahadith that we have, whether it's in Sunni and Shia sources, and I urge you all to look them up. Al-Islam.org, al-Islam.org is a good website for such sources. And there's a lot of ahadith on the Qa'im, and that even if there was one day left on the day of the earth, then the Qa'im would come and he would rise, that there are 12 princes from the family of Rasulullah that will come and rule, and that there will not be a time that the earth will be empty or void of a proof of Allah. So search for him.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you who to follow. You search for him, find. And
that's
Allah
the beauty of
the
it, isn't it? That,
inshallah, and connect with him and keep that connection up, because that is our duty as followers in this time, is to constantly remember him, remember our duties to him and to ourselves in the shade of his leadership, and continue to live. We have to continue to live as if he is here, rather than waiting for him to come, then we'll become better Muslims. Yeah. So he is here, but that is the beauty of it, that we, just because we can't see it, is the greatest test for us. And Rasulullah said this, that will be salams on your brothers, and his companions asked, aren't we the close ones? And he says, no, I speak of a generation that will come, that will believe in me, that will believe in all the imams, that will believe in all the things, believe in me without having seen me, and that it will be a time of trial when they will not even see their imam. Right? So we have that opportunity and that honor, rather, of being those people who are undergoing that test.
Yeah, definitely, inshallah.
And it's difficult, but to keep going and to pray, like Imam Zamana says, praying for the reappearances is just as important as one of the duties of the believers and the followers of Imam. So working in his way is very important, and that means living the message of Imam Hussein, because they're no different. So inshallah, if we can adopt that attitude, that from one to the last, whether it's Rasulullah, Imam Ali or Imam Zamana, they all strive for the same thing. It's the same message that they're reflecting. There's no change to the message at all. In fact, they were just... La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Exactly. And the Quran is the one book that we have to follow. Precisely. They were the keepers of the message, and they were there to preserve it. And that's exactly what Imam Hussein al-Islam did during his time, what Imam Hassan did during his time, Imam Ali did during his time. Each of the Imams did that during their time. They were trying to remind the people of the original pristine message of Rasulullah sallallahu as it was delivered to him by Jibreel from God. So it's the same message, it hasn't changed, and the followers of the school of the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam want to stay true to that message, and the best people for us to cling to for that message is the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam themselves. Inshallah, we are going to continue this series. We've got a few more shows that we can talk about, all the lessons that we can learn. We've talked a little bit about the intention of Imam Hussein al-Salam, which of course was that he wanted to bring back the religion, reform the religion of his grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His intention was purely for Allah,
He didn't do it for political reasons or for personal gain or worldly benefits. None of that was of interest to him. And he was truly victorious that day on the plains of Karbala, because this is a testament to it as we are remembering him today, 1400 years on. And inshallah, long will it continue as well.
Sure.
Now, what we want to do is also let you know that there's an opportunity for you to be part of this show. So if you have anything that you would like to share with us, whether it's sketches, drawings, poems, any nohas that you've recited, anything like that, we would love to hear from you. Is there anything else that we can ask them to send to us?
Any write-ups, anything that they can do, video links,
Yeah, pictures or anything like this as well. We're going to give you a couple of examples of the kind of thing we're looking for. So if you just look towards your screens, we've got some beautiful sketches here that have been sent in by us, to us by someone very close. Ayman Hirji has shared some of her sketches. Do you want to just talk us through?
Oh, those are some of the sketches I did when, alhamdulillah, I was granted the opportunity to go for ziyarah for the first time.
Oh, mashallah.
And that is a picture of the Haram of Abul Fadl from Bayn al-Haramain.
So you actually sketched this whilst you were there?
Yeah, whilst I was
or
there.
from memory? Oh, wow. And this is, of course, the Dhari itself.
Yeah, this is the Dhari itself.
Oh,
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Mashallah. Very, very nice. Very, very good of you to share that with us. We've also got a poem that we'd like to share with you. So I'll read that poem when it appears on the screen, which should be any minute now. Here it is. It's called O Hussein. Okay. It starts, O bird that flies in the vicinity of my beloved, you are the object of my envy. Your sweet melody of love uninterrupted echoes for all to witness, while my words stutter and my attention drifts. You flutter to and fro and get glimpses of my beloved to your heart's desire, while I struggle to grasp the silver adornment and peer through. You perch silently above his resting place serenely, while I sway amongst and a wave of others. There is none to wave you away, to make room for another, while I weep as I look, and to find a spot all my own close to him. I watch how you swiftly circle my beloved, your wings gently kissing the shrine of my love. My eyes follow you as you flutter around the magnificent golden sun of his dome, your eyes focused on him, your song so sweet and soothing, echoing Hussein, Hussein, Hussein. Ah, how I pine to soar as high as you and let every iota of my being circumambulate my love. I watch in growing envy. I pine to be eternally in his company, bound only to him. Oh bird, I'm not different to you. You make this your home. I am home. My search and my restlessness have ended, for under the golden shade and red banner, amidst the reflections of the mirrors and silver enclosure, and against the green cool marble, I have found peace and contentment. I have come home, where I belong. O bird, how I long I were in your place. How I yearn to be you and spend my life in proximity to the passion of my soul. MashaAllah, that's truly beautiful, and that you can see the emotions really come out from that. That's a person that's been for ziyarah and has felt that special proximity that you only get when you're truly close to your beloved. So if you've got anything like that that you'd like to send in to us, then you can do it. There's several ways that you can get involved. You can send an email to us at livingislam@hidayat.tv. That's livingislam@hidayat.tv. Or if you're on Facebook, then you can join our group and like our page, and there's a way for you, if you like the page, to send in your entries by inboxing them to us. And we really look forward to receiving them, and we'll share them with you in the shows to come as well, if they are picked, inshallah. Jazakallah for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu for now.